Officer Ethan Walker never expected the call that cold December night, a tip about strange noises inside an abandoned train yard. But when he pried open the rusted metal door of an old cargo car, what he found made him stop in his tracks. A German shepherd, tied up with thick rope, barely breathing, and covered in old bruises. No tags, no collar. But beneath the dog's neck, hidden under matted fur, was something Ethan never expected. A faded tattoo. A K9 unit number. The dog had been one of them. A warrior. And someone had discarded him like garbage. Who did this? Why would anyone throw away a trained K9? And more importantly, what would Ethan do next? This story will touch the deepest part of your heart because sometimes the ones left behind become the ones who save us. If you've ever believed that second chances exist, even for those forgotten, stay with us till the end. And in the comments, tell us, have you ever rescued someone or been rescued yourself? The wind cut sharp across the outskirts of Ashton, a small industrial town nestled in the frozen edges of upstate New York. It was just past midnight, and a biting December cold had turned the air brittle. The old train yard near the eastern warehouses sat like a graveyard of rusted metal and broken silence. Sleet tapped gently against Officer Ethan Walker's windshield as he rolled through his regular patrol route, fingers tight around the steering wheel. Ethan, 36, was built like a man who had learned to carry weight far heavier than a badge. He had the lean frame of a lifelong runner, short brown hair darkened at the sides with hints of gray, and storm gray eyes that rarely blinked at chaos but often softened at the sight of his son. He had been a widower for nearly 2 years now. The loss of his wife, Lauren, in a freak car accident had left him raising their 7-year-old son, Liam, alone. These late-night shifts had become his quiet refuge, a place where grief didn't speak as loudly. His patrol car hummed along the perimeter of the rail yard. Most nights, the place was silent. But tonight, just as he passed the third row of derelict train cars, he heard something, a sound. Faint, broken, not the wind, not a raccoon, a whimper. Ethan turned off the radio, heart pausing. He reversed the car slowly and parked under the broken floodlight. Grabbing his flashlight and resting a hand on his sidearm, he stepped out. The cold slapped him immediately. He pulled up the collar of his jacket and moved cautiously toward the sound. The beam of his flashlight swept across graffiti-covered metal. Most of the boxcars were sealed shut with rusted locks. But one, an old, dented Southern Pacific cargo car, stood slightly ajar. The sound was clearer now, a weak, raspy whine. Ethan approached, shoulder tense. He pushed the door further open with a creak of old iron hinges. The smell hit him first wet fur, rust, something sour underneath. Then the light landed on it, a German shepherd, curled up in the corner of the car, pressed against the far wall like it was trying to disappear. Its fur was soaked, matted, filthy. A thick, frayed rope was knotted around its midsection and looped tight to a rusted metal bar. One of its hind legs was twisted unnaturally beneath it. The dog's body trembled with shallow, shivering breaths. Its eyes met his. Not wild, not aggressive, just pleading. Ethan lowered the flashlight beam and crouched down slowly, careful not to startle the animal. "Hey there, boy. It's okay. You're not alone now." The dog didn't move. It let out another weak whimper, as if trying to cry out but no longer having the strength. Ethan pulled out his utility knife. The rope was soaked and stiff, tied in knots that looked like they'd been pulled by someone angry. As he worked to cut through, he noticed deep indentations in the dog's fur from the pressure. There were old wounds, 2 healing scars under the filth. "You're a tough one," Ethan murmured. It took him several minutes to loosen the last knot. As it fell away, the dog didn't bolt. It didn't move at all, just collapsed forward like its body had forgotten how to stand. Ethan took off his heavy coat and wrapped it around the dog, lifting it gently. It was lighter than expected, far too light. The warmth of the coat seemed to startle the dog. It shifted slightly, its nose pushing into Ethan's chest before going limp again. He carried the dog to the car, carefully laying it across the back seat. The heater was already on full blast. Ethan placed a fleece blanket over the animal and gently closed the door. Back in the driver's seat, he took a moment to look down at the bundle in the mirror. The dog's breathing was shallow but steady. For a second, Ethan just sat there, hands resting on the wheel, staring into the night through the frosted glass. Somewhere in that cold, broken yard, someone had left this animal to die. Someone had tied him up and walked away without looking back. But Ethan had looked, and that had made all the difference. He turned the key in the ignition. "Let's get you out of here, buddy," he whispered. As the car rolled away from the abandoned train yard, the snow finally began to fall. The snow thickened as Ethan drove, tires humming over salt-dusted roads. The German Shepherd in the back seat barely moved, nestled under Ethan's heavy jacket. Every few minutes, Ethan glanced into the rearview mirror, watching the steady rise and fall of the dog's chest. He didn't know why he felt so protective over an animal he'd only just met, but something about the broken way it had lain there in that train car stirred something deep in him, something older than duty. Grace Carter's clinic sat just outside downtown Ashton, tucked between a shuttered antique shop and a laundromat that had seen better decades. A hand-painted wooden sign swayed slightly in the wind above the entrance. Carter Veterinary Care. Emergencies always welcome. A string of warm white lights still framed the window despite the hour. She was open. Of course she was. Grace, 33, was the kind of woman who made practicality look graceful. She was of average height with a compact frame, her auburn curls usually tucked into a loose bun, and her scrubs were always clean even when covered in paw prints. She had a calm voice, sharp intuition, and a dry sense of humor that only surfaced when needed most. Years of working with abandoned animals had given her a quiet resilience. She'd seen trauma, stitched it up, and stayed kind despite it. When Ethan rang the bell, she appeared behind the glass with a raised eyebrow and a towel already in hand. "What now?" she called as she opened the door, squinting into the snow. "Please don't tell me it has scales this time." "Not scales," Ethan said, "but definitely scars." Grace followed him to the car. When he opened the back door, her casual demeanor fell away. She leaned in, reaching for the dog with practiced gentleness. "He's freezing," she murmured. "And he's been like this how long?" "I don't know," Ethan said. "Found him in a cargo car. Tied up, alone." Together, they lifted the dog inside, laying him on the padded table in the exam room. The warm, overhead lights revealed more detail. Patches of missing fur, bruises in various stages of healing, and a swelling around the ribs that made Grace frown. "This wasn't an accident," she said as she began her assessment. "Someone did this deliberately." The dog gave a low groan, but didn't resist. Grace placed a hand lightly on his flank. "Hey, buddy." "You're safe now. Just hang in there." She clipped away the fur around the neck to examine a collar wound, and that's when she stopped. Her gloved fingers paused mid-motion. "Ethan, look at this." Beneath the fur, along the skin of the dog's neck, was a faint but unmistakable tattooed serial number. Ethan stepped closer. "That looks like K9 registration," Grace finished. She moved to her desk, flipping open her laptop. Her fingers tapped keys quickly. "Let me cross-reference." Ethan looked back at the dog. The animal didn't look like a warrior now. He looked like something forgotten. But he had once belonged somewhere, had a handler, a job, a name. Grace let out a soft gasp. "Found him. HEK9 ID. Number 3217ALX. Name, Rex. Last registered to the Charleston PD in South Carolina. Status, missing in action. Last seen 9 months ago during a drug raid gone sideways." Ethan let out a breath. 9 months. Grace turned the screen toward him. His handler was injured. There was chaos. Someone said they saw a black van leaving the scene. Authorities assumed Rex ran off or was taken. No sign of him since. Ethan stared at the image on the screen. A younger, stronger version of the dog he'd just pulled from a train car. In the photo, Rex stood tall beside a smiling officer, vest tight across his chest, eyes alert. "He was someone's partner," Ethan said quietly. "Someone probably still wonders if he's alive." Grace nodded. "And now he's here." Dumped like trash. She began cleaning the wounds, injecting fluids, checking vitals. "I don't like this," she said after a moment. "You don't just lose a trained K-9 in a raid and then find him tied up across the country months later." Ethan frowned. "You think someone took him? Maybe used him, then dumped him when he became inconvenient. I've seen dogs stolen for illegal fights or worse security for backroom operations." Ethan's jaw clenched. The idea of Rex being forced to fight or guard some filthy hideout made his stomach twist. "If they did that to a trained K-9, he muttered, "what else are they capable of?" The dog let out a small, almost inaudible sigh. Grace glanced at the heart monitor. "Stable for now, but he's been through hell. He'll need time, rest, and probably months of retraining if he ever works again." Ethan looked down at the blanket-covered body. "He doesn't have to work again," he said. "He just needs to live." Grace gave him a long look, then nodded. "You thinking of taking him in?" Ethan shrugged. "For now, until we figure things out." Grace smirked faintly. "That's how it always starts." The morning after the long, frozen night, the sun rose over Ashton with a pale, watery glow. Snow still lined the curbs and rooftops, melting slowly into slush beneath the weak daylight. Inside Grace Carter's veterinary clinic, the warmth from the radiators hummed softly, mixing with the faint scent of antiseptic and chamomile soap. It was quiet, but not still. In the back recovery room, Rex lay curled on a padded blanket, one paw twitching every so often as if still caught in motion. His breathing had steadied overnight thanks to fluids and warmth, but his eyes remained clouded with a kind of watchfulness no sedative could erase. Ethan had returned before sunrise. He hadn't slept, not really. After dropping Liam at school, he came back and sat cross-legged on the floor beside the recovery pen, thermos of black coffee in one hand, the other resting loosely near the edge of the blanket. Not touching, just close enough. Grace had peeked in on them around 7. "You planning to move in?" she asked with a gentle smirk, her auburn hair pulled into a high ponytail, scrubs fresh and a clipboard tucked under one arm. "He seems calmer when someone's nearby," Ethan replied, eyes not leaving the dog. Rex didn't respond to their voices. He lay as he had for hours, still but never relaxed, ears flicking slightly at sudden sounds, body tensing whenever the door creaked. "He's eaten a little," Grace said, "but not enough. And he won't drink unless you're here. That says something." Ethan finally looked up. "What do you think he remembers?" Grace hesitated before answering. "Enough to be afraid of everyone. That's usually more than enough." Later that afternoon, after most of her appointments were done, Grace gave Ethan permission to take Rex outside into the enclosed yard behind the clinic. It was a quiet space bordered by cedar fencing, with a few snow-covered shrubs and a rusting bench in the corner. Ethan laid down a trail of boiled chicken bits from the door to the center of the yard, then opened the recovery room crate. Rex didn't move. Ethan crouched nearby. No rush, not expecting Trick's partner, just air. It took 10 minutes, but eventually Rex limped out. His movements were stiff, cautious. His left hind leg still dragged slightly. He sniffed the air, ears back, tail low, but not tucked. Every sound made him flinch, a crow overhead, the rustle of wind in the bushes. But then his nose caught the scent of chicken, and hunger overrode fear. He moved slowly along the trail, biting each piece in silence, never looking up. Grace watched from inside, arms folded over her chest. Her assistant, Margot, stood beside her. Margot, in her late 20s, wore thick glasses and had a gentle manner with animals but rarely spoke above a whisper. "That dog's seen some bad days," Margot said softly. Grace nodded. "And now maybe he'll see better ones." By late evening, Rex had returned to his blanket in the recovery room. He still wouldn't let Grace touch him, not fully. When she entered with fresh gauze and antiseptic, he growled low, barely audible, Not a threat, a warning. Ethan had to speak to him first, slowly, voice low and calm. Only then would Rex allow the treatment. "He trusts your tone," Grace said, "not just your face." "Your voice. That matters." Ethan had started speaking to Rex like he would to a fellow officer. Not cooing, not commands, just presence. "You did good out there today," he said while helping Grace apply salve. "That yard? You owned it. Those bushes didn't stand a chance." Rex blinked slowly. A single thump of his tail hit the floor. That was the first time. The next day, Ethan brought Liam after school. The boy had bright brown eyes, tousled hair, and the nervous energy of a child still learning how to exist in a world that had changed too soon. He stayed close to Ethan, peering cautiously into the room where Rex lay. "Is he scary?" Liam asked. "Only to bad guys," Ethan replied. "To you? He's just tired, and maybe a little sad." Liam stepped closer, holding a piece of dried beef snack in his small hand. Rex raised his head but didn't move. The boy placed the treat on the edge of the blanket, then backed away. Rex sniffed. Then, slowly, he reached forward and took it. Grace, watching from the doorway, whispered, "That might be the most progress we'll see all week." That night, as Ethan sat beside Rex in the dimmed clinic, he noticed something strange. The dog had started twitching in his sleep, legs kicking weakly, jaw tightening. Then a small whine escaped. His breathing quickened. "Nightmare?" Ethan murmured. Rex let out a muffled growl, still asleep. His paws shifted as if running from something, not toward it. Ethan reached out, resting a hand gently on Rex's shoulder. The reaction was immediate. Rex jerked awake with a snarl, eyes wild. He scrambled backward into the corner, panting, teeth bared. Ethan didn't move. He just spoke. "It's okay. You're safe. Nobody's gonna hurt you here." It took nearly a minute, but the tension in Rex's body began to fade. His mouth closed. His breathing slowed. And then, quietly, he crept forward again, curled back onto the blanket, this time closer to Ethan. Grace entered moments later, eyes concerned. "He dreaming again?" Ethan nodded. "He saw something he can't forget." "Yeah," she whispered. "But now, maybe he has someone to remember it with." The wind had lost its bite, but the streets of Ashton still wore a crust of frost when Ethan parked his cruiser in front of a modest blue-gray house on the outskirts of town. The lawn was dormant, the mailbox leaning slightly, and a tire swing hung motionless from the old maple in the front yard. This was home, and today it would be Rex's too. Ethan stepped out of the car and opened the back door. Rex sat there, eyes alert but calm. The bandages on his leg had been changed that morning. The swelling around his ribs was going down, but his wariness that hadn't faded. "Ready to meet your new place?" Ethan asked gently. Rex didn't move until Ethan clipped on the leash. The dog stood slowly, limping but steady, and followed with measured steps toward the front door. Inside, the house was simple but warm. Family photos lined the hallway. Ethan in uniform, Liam as a toddler, and in the center of the mantel a framed picture of a smiling woman with honey blonde hair and laugh lines at the corners of her eyes. Her name was Mara, Ethan's late wife. She had passed 2 years ago in a car accident that left Ethan raising Liam alone. The air inside the house smelled faintly of pine and cinnamon, a candle Ethan had lit before leaving. Rex paused in the doorway, sniffing the threshold, then cautiously stepped inside. Liam peeked around the corner from the living room. At 7 years old, he was a wiry boy with shaggy brown hair and oversized pajama pants. His arms clutched a green plush dinosaur, the seams frayed from years of nightly companionship. He looked up at Ethan, eyes wide. "Is that the dog from the train car?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "His name's Rex. He's staying with us for a while." Liam tightened his grip on the dinosaur. "Is he going to bite me?" "Not if we treat him with kindness." "He's had a hard time, buddy." Just like us, Rex sat beside Ethan, not growling, not wagging, just watching. His ears flicked toward Liam, then back again. Liam took a slow step forward, then stopped. Rex didn't move. Ethan placed a soft dog bed near the sliding glass door in the kitchen where sunlight spilled across the tiles. He filled a water bowl and set it beside a mix of soft kibble and shredded turkey. Rex sniffed, then lowered his head to drink. Liam, still watching from the corner, whispered, "He's really thirsty." That night, after dinner pizza and apple slices for Liam, a ham sandwich for Ethan, Rex explored the house slowly. He limped from room to room, sniffing door frames, corners, shoes, furniture legs. When he reached Liam's room, the boy had left a pile of toys on the floor. Rex sniffed the plastic dinosaurs and soft plushies but didn't touch any of them. Instead, he walked over to the foot of Liam's bed and lay down for a minute. Then he rose and returned to the kitchen, settling on the dog bed, head resting on his front paws. Ethan sat on the couch with a stack of mail in his lap. Bills, flyers, one letter from the police department about an upcoming meeting. He set it aside and walked to the fridge. He took a photo out from the drawer and taped it on the fridge door. It was Mara, holding Liam in one arm, waving at the camera with the other. Her smile lit up the entire frame. Rex raised his head and stared at the photo. Just stared. Ethan noticed. "Yeah," he said softly. "She had that effect on everyone." Rex looked at Ethan for a long moment, then slowly laid his head back down. No growl, no twitch, just silence. That night, Ethan let Rex sleep inside the house without the crate. The dog chose a spot by the front door. Not the bed, not near the fireplace, right by the door. When Ethan checked on him later, Rex was still awake, eyes open in the dark, staring at the knob like it might turn any moment. "It's okay," Ethan whispered. "No one's coming." "You're not going back there." Rex didn't move, but his eyes blinked slowly. In the middle of the night, Ethan was woken by the sound of claws against hardwood. He crept out of bed to find Rex pacing in the hall, nose low, tail still. "Night patrol?" Ethan asked. Rex stopped, looked at him, then resumed pacing. Ethan sat on the stairs, rubbing his eyes. "You don't have to stand guard anymore." But maybe he wasn't guarding. Maybe he was waiting for the people who hurt him, or for someone who never came back. The next morning, Liam came downstairs rubbing his eyes, still in pajamas. He padded into the kitchen and paused. Rex was lying beside the fridge, one eye half open. Liam crouched, set down his green dinosaur gently in front of Rex, and said, "You can borrow this if you want." "He helped me after Mom died." Rex lifted his head, sniffed the toy, and gave it one soft nudge with his nose. "His name's Spike," Liam added. Ethan watched from the hallway, something catching in his throat. Later that day, Ethan left for a short shift at the department, leaving Rex and Liam at home with Ethan's sister Claire, a tall woman in her early 30s-40s with strong arms and a Boston accent that never faded. She had taken care of Liam many times before. Claire greeted Rex with a calm voice and a sideways glance. "So, you're the one with trust issues, huh? Welcome to the club." Rex didn't react much, but accepted the treat she offered and lay down by the fireplace while Liam showed her his new drawing of a dinosaur with a police badge. That night, Rex didn't sleep by the front door. He slept near Liam's bedroom instead. The city's East District was a patchwork of shadows. Old brick buildings leaned toward each other like secrets whispered in the dark. Alleys stretched like ribs, filled with rusting bikes, stray cats, and broken glass that glittered like teeth under the moonlight. It was here, in the fringe where even sirens hesitated to echo, that Ethan found himself chasing a suspect on foot. A local shop owner had reported strange movement near the back of his pawn store, someone digging through crates near midnight. Ethan responded alone, not expecting much. He brought Rex along, not as an official partner, but out of habit, a gut feeling. Rex trotted beside him with quiet alertness. His body had recovered well, muscle returning, scars fading, but Ethan hadn't yet made the decision to reinstate him as a full-duty companion. Too soon, maybe. Too risky. The radio crackled. "Unit 4, suspect spotted heading north on Halden Alley." Ethan flicked his flashlight on, gun holstered for now. He moved fast, boots echoing over wet pavement. Then, a blur. A man in a black hoodie darted across a fence, landed hard, and sprinted into the shadows. Ethan shouted, "Police!" "Stop. No use." He bolted after him, heart hammering, breath turning to fog. The alley split. Ethan veered right, just in time to see the suspect vault over an overturned dumpster. And then Rex. The German Shepherd exploded past Ethan in a silent burst of speed. Muscles coiled, eyes locked, his body a missile of instinct and memory. The suspect glanced back, and that's when Rex leapt. It wasn't violent. It was precision. Rex tackled the man mid-stride, twisting his body just enough to send the suspect tumbling to the ground, then stood over him, growling low, teeth bared. Ethan arrived seconds later, gun drawn, voice firm. "Don't move." The man, scruffy, early 30s, stubble and a greasy ponytail, lifted both hands. He had a knife in his belt, but never got to touch it. Ethan kicked it aside and cuffed him quickly. Okay. The suspect gasped. "I didn't know you had a damn K9. Ethan looked down at Rex. "Neither did I." At the station, the suspect was identified as Michael Reeds, a repeat offender with burglary and assault priors. His knife had traces of residue-likely narcotics. Officers gathered around Ethan's desk, watching Rex with renewed interest. "You sure he's not already back on duty?" one of them joked. Detective Sarah Brennan, in her early 40s, sharp-featured and always wearing a tailored gray coat over her pantsuits, raised an eyebrow as she approached. She was known for her calm authority and piercing insight. "So," she said, sipping coffee, "your train yard rescue just outperformed half the rookies in this building." Ethan shrugged, but his voice softened. "He's not ready." "Not officially. He just saved your life, Ethan. If that doesn't count for readiness, I don't know what does." As Sarah walked away, one of the younger officers whispered, "Guess the cop dog is back." The nickname spread like fire through dry grass. That night, Ethan stood in the backyard watching Rex sniff at Liam's soccer ball. Snow hadn't returned yet, but the wind bit like a warning. Ethan's mind wandered. Why had Rex acted with such certainty? He hadn't been ordered, no command, just instinct. Claire stepped out, wrapping a shawl around herself. "He doesn't wait by the door anymore," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "No, he's watching over us now. Maybe it's not about what he remembers," Claire continued. "Maybe it's about who he's becoming again." Ethan looked at Rex, who had settled on the porch, eyes alert but at peace. The next morning, he filled out the form to begin official reinstatement proceedings for Rex. It would take weeks training checks, paperwork, psychological clearance. But something inside him had already shifted. Rex wasn't just a dog that survived. He was choosing to serve again. The morning after the alley chase, Ethan sat at his desk staring at the preliminary report. The suspect they'd apprehended had connections to an old gang tied to vehicle thefts and suspected dog trafficking across county lines. What caught Ethan's attention most wasn't the suspect, it was Rex. That moment in the alley wasn't random. Something about it felt triggered. Later that day, Ethan brought Rex to a new crime scene just outside the city, a warehouse fire where several abandoned vehicles were found. Detective Sarah Brennan was already there. Tall, lean, and sharply dressed in a dark trench coat, Sarah had an eye for patterns others missed. Her black hair was tied in a neat braid, and she was known for her calm, analytical demeanor, forged after losing her partner in a raid years ago. She nodded as Ethan approached. "This one's messy," she said. "Lots of gasoline residue. But there's something else." Rex sniffed the ground. Suddenly, his body tensed. He growled, not out of threat, but memory. His nose buried into a patch of oil-stained dirt, then he started pacing in tight circles. "He smells something," Ethan said, kneeling. "Something familiar." Rex's ears twitched. His tail was stiff. Then, without warning, he pulled Ethan toward the back of the warehouse, toward a rusted hatch partially covered by a tarp. Beneath it was a forgotten maintenance corridor and a pile of discarded crates reeking of burnt metal and a strange, bitter, chemical industrial-grade engine oil. Rex began scratching frantically at one crate. Ethan opened it and froze. Inside were scraps of shredded canine harnesses. each marked with faded K9 tags. Back at the precinct, Ethan called Grace. She arrived an hour later, holding an old file box. "I remembered something," she said. "Years ago, when I worked in Colorado, 3 different police departments reported missing K9s, all trained, all vanished without a trace. Together, they laid the files out on a conference table. Colorado Springs, Flagstaff, Reno, all missing within the same 8-month window, all German shepherds, all strong candidates for drug and bomb units, all under mysterious circumstances disappearing off training grounds or during solo deployment." Grace pulled up a digital photo of one of the dogs. The resemblance to Rex was uncanny. Same age range, same build, different scar above the eye, but everything else aligned. "They're not just stealing dogs," Sarah murmured. "They're targeting K9 units." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "But why? These dogs are traceable. They have IDs, tattoos, microchips. What if," Grace said slowly, "they're altering or erasing identities, retraining them for underground fights, smuggling, maybe even drugs?" Silence fell across the room. Rex lay nearby, eyes closed, but his ears perked at the mention of the word fights. Ethan walked over and gently laid his hand on Rex's back. "You remember, don't you?" Rex opened his eyes, dark and distant, haunted. Later that evening, Ethan sat alone at his kitchen table, staring at the evidence board he'd started taping to the wall. Threads ran between photos of locations, names of missing dogs, sketches from witness statements. At the center was a photo of Rex taken from his vet intake file. Ethan whispered, almost to himself, "You're not just a rescue, are you? You're a witness." Just then, a ping from his laptop. Grace had forwarded an internal report from the ASPCA. A recent raid in Nevada had uncovered 3 dogs chained in a garage. 2 of them had matching training commands from police databases. One was confirmed to be a K9 missing since last winter. In the corner of one photo, the same type of engine oil container Rex had reacted to. The same gang. Ethan turned to Rex, who now sat silently beside him, alert. "We're going to find them. All of them." Rex didn't wag his tail. He just stared at Ethan with a gaze full of knowing. The sky hung low over the outskirts of Asheville that morning, a heavy gray veil that matched the mood in the precinct. Snow had begun to fall again, soft and unassuming, blanketing the streets in silence. But inside the police van rumbling toward an abandoned warehouse at the city's edge, the atmosphere was tense. Officers in tactical gear checked their weapons, reviewed their roles, and glanced at one another with quiet resolve. Ethan sat in the front, his gloved hand resting on the broad back of Rex, who stood at attention beside him. The German shepherd, now fully recovered, had taken on a new energy in recent weeks, stronger, focused, almost like he knew this was personal. The tip had come in from a sting operation in the next county, a warehouse suspected to be a holding site for stolen K9 units. Grace had been the one to make the connection, linking details from Rex's past to the pattern of disappearances in 3 states. Now, Ethan and his team were about to find out if those leads were true. Detective Sarah Brennan, wearing her black tactical jacket and her hair pulled into a tight braid, nodded at Ethan. "Warehouse is 3 blocks up, no movement outside. Looks quiet." Ethan looked down at Rex. "You ready, partner?" Rex let out a low, focused growl and pressed forward, his nose twitching as the van slowed to a crawl. The raid began with controlled precision. Officers moved in through the front and side entrances, sweeping the hallways with silent efficiency. But it was Rex who picked up the scent first, an oil-stained trail that veered sharply toward the lower corridor. He barked once, then darted ahead. "Follow him!" Ethan shouted, sprinting after the dog. Sarah and 2 other officers flanked him. The hallway descended into a wide industrial basement. The air was thick with grease, rust, and something more gut-wrenching fear. Caged whimpers echoed faintly in the distance. Rex skidded to a halt in front of a heavy steel door and barked furiously. Ethan pushed it open. Inside were rows of metal cages, 6 of them, each holding a dog. Some were scarred, some thin and trembling, but all were silent until they saw Rex. Then one dog, grizzled and gray around the muzzle, stood and let out a long, weak howl. Rex barked back loud and sharp, as if recognizing an old comrade. Ethan approached the cages slowly. The older dog had cloudy eyes and a long scar over one hip. A faded leather collar still hung from its neck, barely legible. K9-Delta. The moment stretched, sacred and heart-wrenching. Rex paced around the cage, tail wagging in tight circles, whimpering with urgency. Ethan knelt beside him. This was one of yours, wasn't it? Meanwhile, upstairs the rest of the unit had flushed out 3 suspects. One fled into the machine room. Ethan received the call on his radio, nodded to Sarah, and rushed to assist. The machine room was a mess of moving belts and stacked crates. Ethan crept in cautiously. A figure jumped from behind, swinging an iron pipe. Before Ethan could react, a flash of fur bolted through the side. Rex launched himself into the attacker, knocking him sideways. The pipe clattered to the floor. Ethan spun and cuffed the man, heart hammering. "You saved my life again," Ethan whispered, rubbing Rex's neck. The dog panted, eyes alert but calm. He wasn't just remembering pain anymore, he was rewriting his purpose. Back in the basement, officers had begun cataloging the dogs, scanning for microchips, and preparing transport to the veterinary unit. As each cage opened, the animals hesitated until Rex approached and sniffed them gently, like a silent assurance that they were safe now. One officer, Sergeant Bill Harrow, an older man with thick white eyebrows and a permanent limp, stood motionless in front of a cage. Tears brimmed in his eyes. "Charlie?" he choked. The dog inside let out a low, familiar whine. Then recognition sparked, and the old K9 limped to the bars, tail wagging madly. Harrow fell to his knees, pressing his forehead against the cage. "You've been gone 2 years, buddy. They said you were dead." Ethan turned away, throat tightening. Later that night, the warehouse had been emptied, suspects arrested, and the rescued dogs brought to Grace's clinic. She worked late into the night with her team, checking each animal one by one. When she reached Rex, she knelt beside him and simply whispered, "You did it." "You brought them home." Rex didn't bark. He didn't need to. His eyes, full of quiet fire, said everything. The city of Millersville had seen its fair share of ceremonies, but this one was different. The town hall was lit with golden string lights, reporters buzzing near the velvet rope. Not for a mayor, not for a medal-laden general, but for a dog. Rex. A week had passed since the daring raid on the warehouse. The department had made arrests, rescued the captured K9s, and uncovered a trafficking network that spanned 3 states. But the heart of the story, the symbol that united officers and citizens alike, was a German shepherd who had once been tied and left for dead. Rex sat beside Ethan on the small stage erected in front of the courthouse steps. He wore a navy blue collar embroidered with gold thread, a fresh badge hanging from it. His posture was proud, eyes alert but calm. It was the first time he stood before a crowd without the tension of fear gripping his frame. Ethan adjusted his dress blues. He looked down at Rex, a quiet smile tugging the corner of his mouth. "You ready for this, partner?" Rex let out a soft huff. The mayor, a heavy-set man in his 60s named Thomas Baird, stepped to the podium. With gray hair combed neatly and glasses perched on his nose, he cleared his throat before the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor bravery. Not the kind forged in steel or weapons, but the kind born of loyalty, survival, and redemption. Rex, the dog who saved lives, uncovered the past and reminded us all that every soul deserves a second chance." Applause roared. Camera flashes bathed the small platform in bursts of light. Ethan crouched beside Rex, placing a hand gently on the dog's shoulder. Then came Liam. The 7-year-old had insisted on speaking. Wearing a white button-down shirt tucked into slightly wrinkled khakis, he held a velvet box. His blonde hair had been combed for once, and his freckled face shone with nervous pride. He stepped up to the microphone, cleared his throat, and opened the box. Inside was a custom collar. Black leather with a silver nameplate that read in bold lettering, "Rex, our hero." "Rex isn't just a police dog," Liam said, his voice small but clear. "He's family. He helped my dad, he helped people, and he helped me not be scared of the dark anymore." There was silence, then a standing ovation. Ethan looked toward Grace, who stood a few rows back, hands clasped in front of her. Her auburn hair had been pulled into a low bun, and she wore a soft blue blouse under her coat. Her eyes shimmered, a proud smile on her lips. After the ceremony, back at home, Ethan poured a cup of decaf and sat on the couch while Liam played with toy dinosaurs in the living room. Rex lay on his rug, a plush bed that had been placed near the fireplace. He didn't sleep on the hard floor anymore. He didn't sleep with one eye open. He belonged now. Grace stopped by with a plate of holiday cookies. She leaned in the doorway, watching the fire crackle. "You know," she said softly, "it's not just a dog that came back. It's a miracle. A living, breathing reminder that healing is possible." Ethan nodded, brushing a hand over Rex's back. That night, Ethan knelt beside his bed. He didn't do it often, but tonight felt different. He folded his hands. "Thank you, Lord," he whispered, "for second chances, for loyalty, for Rex." The room was quiet, except for the gentle exhale of the sleeping dog at his feet. Rex was more than a dog. He was a miracle in fur, a warrior with scars who taught us that even the broken still have battles to win and love to give. Sometimes the blessings we pray for don't come wrapped in perfection, but in second chances, in wounded hearts that still choose loyalty, and in quiet paws that walk beside us when we need them most. Let this story remind you, no matter how lost you feel, you are never abandoned in the eyes of God. He sends help in many forms, even as a dog left behind. Before you leave, take a moment to reflect. If you believe that miracles still happen, if you believe in redemption, if you believe every soul, man, or animal deserves a second chance, then share this story with someone who needs hope. Subscribe to this channel if you want more stories that lift the heart, and in the comments, write Amen if you believe God still watches over us all. May He bless you and your loved ones today and always.